when you're talking about the customers for groceries, etc., or customers for a supermarket, hypermarket chain that have been going to these supermarkets, hypermarkets for a really long time, they've got this entire behavior and a resistance to e-commerce, although that might have changed last year. So we've sort of seen that happen. From the conversation we've had just in the last 20 minutes or so, one thing we've noticed is that the role of technology within stores is going to be heightened. But one thing I'm still a little confused about is about how we use the mobile phones, right? I know today retailers, especially physical retailers, they are trying to get people off of their phones for longer and experience the surrounding and experience the retail atmosphere. But then we've also heard about, concepts like the endless aisle concept, etc., where you need to use your phone to finish a transaction, or you scan using QR codes, etc. So as a retailer, what is your aim at this point as a grocery retailer? Do you want people to also use their own technologies, or is that something that you want them to stay away from?
No, I think that's an interesting point, and I just want to build on what Mr. Ashish was talking about in terms of legacy customers. Yeah, and we are in a unique kind of phase of the retail, that there are at least 6 generations of retail customers who are shopping today. Yeah. And there will never be a situation in which you can brand a customer saying that the customer will be digital savvy or non-digital savvy and things like that. So if there are people from baby boomers till Gen Z who are shopping, you need to create an experience which is unique and tailored to each one of them. You cannot expect a baby boomer to come and say that, okay, now start interacting digitally and look at the robots. They will just shy away from the robots which is standing in front of you. So, and that is the reason why grocery retail, if you see the penetration of e-commerce in grocery retail, as a category, grocery is the least penetrated e-commerce from a global statistics perspective. Yeah. Earlier, pre-pandemic, I think in this region, we were sub 2% in grocery retail. Yeah. And now we are saying about 6-7% is what at the max, even at a peak level, which means that there is still a long way for e-commerce to be from an experience, delivery, and economics perspective to be viable. Yeah, the other categories have moved faster. The apparel, fashion, electronics, I think, are the hottest category, which will continue to do that. Now, coming to your specific question around technology, I have a strong belief that you need to cater your experiences to each and every type of customer. If you push the customer towards one direction, there will be revolt by the customer. And I think that is what we have seen. We have seen, like I said, right? Why did the self-checkout technology fail? I think it was there. When I started my career, I think we were rolling out those technology in Europe in the early part of this decade, this century. Yeah. And still, we don't see a wide adoption of that. And the reason is there is still a friction between that technology and what the customers are looking for. It was meant from a retailer's point of view, believing that, okay, if I were to, and it was more a Western concept in which the cashiers are costlier. How can I reduce that? Can I bring in a technology which will reduce my cashier cost? And then I'll be able to serve it better. A wrong philosophy. You never thought what the customer is looking for at this from the beginning. And that is where some of the technology solutions are not giving you the results which everybody is looking for. Coming to the point that you talked about using mobile, and I think that is one fundamental thing which I've been talking to a lot of retailers, and I strongly believe that the power of mobile in the hands of the consumer is so huge. And I think we are just in the tip of, as a retailer, as an industry, I think the other social media, social commerce, and all those people have tapped into it. But physical retailers are still way back in terms of utilizing that and integrating with the connected store or the connected store ecosystem to basically gain the potential out of it. And I think until and unless you have a strong personalization engine, doing that blindly is going to backfire you. And that is why I think people are being cautious. Retailers are being cautious, saying that we will go to the retailers only when we have the platforms by which we'll be able to personalize the offerings better. Because who cares about a general SMS or a general WhatsApp when you are not interested in that? Yeah, and that is very, very clear. So if you have that personalization engine ready, I think people should use ways by which they can allow customers to use their mobile for shopping and interaction with the retailers.
Great. And honestly, that is one thing I need to talk about more with all of you in the panel right now. But since we are on the grocery subject, I think this might be a good time for me to bring in Miro. I think Honeywell did a recent case study with Jumbo, one of the largest supermarket chains. And Miro, is there something that you'd like to share with us regarding the case study just before we get ahead in our panel discussion?
Yes, sure. So um, when we talk about retail and groceries, and coming back to the point from Piyush, the development of the mobile applications was one of the important things. And here is a case study that I wanted to bring, which is from the Netherlands, where Jumbo is basically the second largest supermarket. It has a lot of stores and a lot of employees. But the most important thing is how they have been going around digitalization, mobility in their various fulfillment centers, distribution centers, grocery stores. They started with e-com in groceries back in 2014. And as they were expanding forward, obviously mobility became quite an important point from their overall business. So when you're looking at what they have been doing is they have been putting these central fulfillment centers, 3 of them. The last one came live in 2021, and 8 hubs from which they were actually making the groceries order fulfillments. Now, the challenges that they faced were actually in terms of flexibility and fast ramp up, as well as how do you do it into a consistent fashion, and how are you future proofing it? Because back in 2014, I don't know if you recall, but Android at that time was 7 Androids back. Simple as possible. At that time, it was still a system that was a fledgling. It had just come online for the industrial automation. It was already in the consumer products, whether it was Samsung's, LG's, Motorola's, Sony's, but it was only starting to get inside into the mobility platforms around. So what has been happening, and this is not just related to the pandemic, is with the speed and acceleration of e-com, the same has happened also with the applications that are actually running on the various mobile terminals. It doesn't matter if it is an optical scan engine enabled device or without. So because of this, where Honeywell came forward was thinking not just in terms of the next 3 years, but thinking in terms of the next 12 years. So this is where we put forward, and Jumbo is one of the brilliant cases where it shows what does it mean to buy a platform rather than buy a device. So what you're seeing in front of you is the so-called Mobility Edge platform of Honeywell. It's not only so-called. Actually, what it gives you is forward looking compatibility of both hardware and Android solution, coupled with a lot of flexibility and capability, especially when you are deploying at scale, and especially when you want to deploy it fast. So what we deployed inside in the fulfillment centers in 2020 for Jumbo was actually a CT40 with a wearable Bluetooth clicker. Why is that? Well, because the one thing we always have to remember about any of these solutions, especially if it is about e-com, is the freedom of the hands. Yes, we can talk about robotics, we can talk about automatic sorting, palletizing, automatic picking, etc. But the one thing that we have to remember, when it comes down to the very end, which is the grocery fulfillment, you're going to have a lot of manual work. And the more you're able to offlift from the processor or the operator, the constant requirement to look, constant requirement to be doing things with one of the hands while with the other he or she is speaking, the higher the productivity you get. So in Jumbo, we, in the latest stores, we deployed CT40 with the wearable Bluetooth clicker. And where it came down to, yes, we did improve their productivity, no doubt, which basically meant that they pushed 15% more orders out with the same number of people. But where the more important part came is about the easiness of execution and the things around fatigue, things around employee satisfaction. And probably the most important thing is around compatibility. So one of the things is all these devices have the exact same platform. All of the devices are managed through the exact same software solution in the background, the mobility edge tools. And all of these devices actually are forward compatible in the same way. And that's what actually Jumbo has been doing the last 5 years is they deployed in the various different departments, different types of Honeywell devices, whether it was the CT40 into their hubs, it was the VM1s on their forklifts, CK65s in the three fulfillment centers, or CT60s when it came to deliveries. It's the more or less one and the same platform. So when you're talking about the solution or the platform, think about 12 years, same device, 12 years forward. This is 4, 5, 6 Android versions forward. You don't need to worry anymore about what is the next thing that Google is going to put on the table. What is the next thing that we can take advantage of the market? This is what a platform approach comes in. That's where the efficiency comes in. It doesn't matter the form factor. It doesn't matter the application. You are ending up with a platform. And that's what I would like to encourage. This is not just about the Honeywell brand or the Honeywell products. That's what you end up, for example, in a lot of the retailers. It doesn't matter whether you are with or without e-com. Every year, basically, you're having new gadgets that are coming on the market. Yes, they might be cheaper. But the one question you have to put yourself, how many Android versions and how many platforms do you want to maintain when you're deploying? Because at the end, it becomes a zoo, especially when you're going for devices that have less compatibility or less upgradability. In a matter of 3 years, you end up with 3, 4, 5 different generations and types of devices. And that makes life, especially when it comes to scaling up or down, rapid scaling in the case of e-com, or rapid scaling down, or movement of the model, it becomes extremely costly.
Yeah. Great. Miro, I think I'm sold, but I don't think I was your target audience at all for this. But that's great. The presentation you've given with regards to the case study that you've shown is amazing. But again, one thing that retailers obviously like and appreciate is results, right? But it's also about how you get to it. And of course, one of the solutions you mentioned was about how with foresight you could perhaps get to it. But Philip, let me bring you into the conversation now. We've been talking about omni-channel and multi-channel very interchangeably, right? Although the concepts are different. And when it comes to omni-channel, one thing that a lot of retailers think that, it's nailed is if you have click and collect, that's about it, right? We've got our omni-channel right, but that probably isn't it. And one major complaint that customers, and I know it as a customer, is when it comes to returns. And when it comes to online and physical and the whole parity and the gap and disconnect there is when it comes to returns. Apart from that, what are the elements that you think retailers need to nail in order to get this omni-channel strategy right?
You got to be multi-channel first, obviously. You got your physical stores, and then you got e-com, so you turn into a multi-channel retailer. And then, like you say, a lot of retailers they're launching click and collect, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we're omni-channel now, great. But the challenge is gluing all of those elements together to like bring them together for the right customer experience. At KOJ, when we launched Click and Collect, we decided to use WhatsApp APIs as our glue. And what I mean by that is if you go onto one of our websites and select Click and Collect, basically your order confirmation will come through on WhatsApp. When your product is ready to collect in the store, we'll WhatsApp you a QR code. You go down to the store, show the QR code, scan it, order pops up on the POS, we process the order, and then the customer can leave, and then they get a thank you WhatsApp afterwards. However, if the customer wants to talk to one of our customer service team at any point, if they reply to any of those messages, the order confirmation, the QR code, the thank you, they're then talking to a live agent. So you know, we've got the elements, we've got the stores, we've got the e-com, we've got the click and collect, but we used kind of WhatsApp to kind of frame it and kind of take the customer experience to the next level. And I think that's where a lot of retailers are stopping. They get, you know, they get it that they need to be omni-channel, and they bring in new omni-channel capabilities or experiences, but they're not gluing them together and bringing the elements together in the right way to make sure that the customer gets a great experience.
So, Philip, just at the back of that, right? So, if at all you've got the glue and you've figured out how to get all of these different processes integrated, and you've got them all right, and you finally have an omni-channel strategy, the next step is, what are the metrics to measure the success of a store today? Considering it's not just a physical store we're talking about this pan integrations. For so long, it has been things like, you know, gross margin or sales per square foot, which doesn't really apply anymore. So I'll start with you, Philip, and then we'll just open the conversation to the rest of them as well.
I suppose this is where the buzzword transformation comes in, because you know, we're talking about people. So, you know, the people who work in the stores, the people who work on e-com, the people who work in the back office. If you can bring the people together when it comes to e-commerce and omni-channel and things like click and collect, then everybody wants to make it work and make it happen. You know, this for us, it needed to happen in two ways. It needed to happen in, you know, our digital transformation team. You know, they work very closely with the retail teams. It's not kind of really like separate teams. They work together. And then, you know, you got the incentive side. So yeah, we do need to incentivize our store teams as well in terms of some clicking, whether it might be click and collect or e-com related activities. So it's trying to make sure that the teams work for one goal, that kind of omni-channel goal. I think, you know, in terms of the KPIs themselves, yeah, okay, you need to make sure that the businesses are looking at their P&Ls, their KPIs holistically together, not in silo. Okay, e-com KPIs here, retail KPIs here. The entire business team needs to understand the KPIs across all the channels, and even if they're not directly responsible for those KPIs, they need to at least understand them. So you know, it's about people at the end of the day, kind of bringing the teams together, bringing the teams on board together. And when you're deploying new things, new capabilities, it's about doing it together and making sure that everybody's on board, well trained, making sure that the utilization is high, and making sure that everybody understands what needs to be achieved to hit those KPIs.
Absolutely. Ashish, I'm going to bring you in. We've used two terms that you don't like at all, omni-channel and transformation.
Yeah.
These are the two terms you stay away from. So let me not ask you that and provoke you to leave this conversation. Instead, let's go on to the metrics. For an electronics retailer, what would you say are the key metrics or the KPIs, like Philip said? How do you determine your success, considering you, especially Jackie's Retail, you've started this entire online evolution since 2000, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the fundamentals haven't changed. Retail is about being where the customer is, and whether the customer was in the high street, in the souk, to the mall, to the smartphone, we follow the journey of the customer wherever they've been, and we need to be there. And the key metrics is being available where the customer is at that particular stage in time. Now, going forward, it's a question of looking at it. And yeah, you're right. I don't like the word transformation. I prefer the term evolution, because that's what it is at the end of the day. It is an evolution of the process. And I'll give you a simple example. Today, you take chatbots. Chatbots today are typically used for customer service type of settings. You have a query, you've got a complaint, you want to talk to someone about something. Post sale is typically where most of the chatbots come in. And there's a startup I mentor who do a chatbot, but they do it quite differently, because they actually work up front in terms of selling to you, just as you would go into a store. So you walk into a store and you ask a salesperson, do you have this, you have that, you have my size? And their chatbot solution does exactly the same thing. you go on the website and you go, can I have this in gray? Do you have it in large? Can I have it shipped over here? And it's exactly the same process. And they work that way in terms of trying to promote a sale. And I think what it comes to at the end of the day is like Piyush said as well, is we look at these technologies and we look at it, what was it designed for from the retailer's hat? And now we spin it into the customer's hat and look at what can we say this works for better. So the self-checkout, I'm a fan of self-checkouts. I'm a fan of self-checkouts post-COVID because it reduces the interaction I've got with people over there. So for me, the safety part of it was actually what attracts me to the self-checkout. I would have avoided it before this as well. So it's much the same thing in terms of how you look at it. Now, as a retailer, obviously we look at it and look at how do we retain our share of the wallet, because we are in a market now where we've got competitors coming out of everywhere. Initially, as a retailer, you competed with specialty retailers. Then you competed with hypermarkets. Now we compete with marketplaces, and the list doesn't end. And for us, it's us looking at it and saying, how do we keep our share of the wallet in a segment that continues to grow? I was sitting with someone today, in fact, and he put it very nicely in an electronics concept. He goes, I'm trying to increase the basket size in the store. Now, he wouldn't have used the word basket size a year ago because he would have been thinking about it from a physical retail, but he's now thinking the online space in his head, in a physical store, saying, I'm trying to increase basket value. We didn't think of that in electronics, but credit to the guy for thinking that way. And I think a lot of this thinking is actually helping us at the end of the day in terms of where the conversation evolves and progresses.
Yes, the conversation evolves and doesn't transform.
Yeah.
So well, let's follow that path again. So where is it going towards? And Syed, let me bring you into this. So we've spoken about a range of things so far, from showrooming, discovery, re-commercing, web to store, and how this thinking is sort of changing, where the principles that we apply online is being applied in store, and that's probably where it's going towards. So what would you say, in your vertical at least, would signify the new retail revolution? What are the key trends that you see is going to dominate your space?
I strongly feel today, if you will see the overall, giving the data that the major sector which has got upward is in electronics or apparels or in the fashion segment. But if you will see, the home segment has not gone up. Today, if you will see during the pandemic, the big retailers in worldwide, like from the Kingfisher, B&Q to Bed Bath Beyond, which whatever they were doing so miserably bad in 2019, 2020 is the blessed year for them. It's because that the home segment overall has grown up. And in the home segment, when it is going up, the one of the primary reason is that people now they spend more time at the home and they do the more shopping and all that. So on that case, it is very, very important, and that this segment will take a lot of time, that when it go completely on an e-commerce segment, maybe 1 decade. So the physical store is going to stay, but the whole overall, there will be a challenge, or there will be a cultural shift on the people, that how they used to shop before and how they are shopping right now. So in our store or in our business, what we are trying to do is, we are really trying to give a very, very different kind of experience to the customer, whether he buys online, he buys offline, he does reverse showrooming before, or he want to do a Zoom call with the sales staff to understand more about the product. So that everything has to be very, very seamless. And you are asking about the different matrices, that how do we measure and how do we define that is working. So I'll tell you very, in the furniture business or in the home improvement business, one of the biggest component of the P&L is the real estate cost. So now, like for example, if I want to show 20 sofas, then for each sofa I need a 13 or 14 square meter. That means I need a 300 square meter area to give for 20 sofas. But now with this e-commerce, then when you put a big screen, you show the 20 sofas, you show the multiple color, multiple variety through the your screen or through the other portable device, where customer can see a better image and he can take a decision. So that is one of our metrics which we show, that without showcasing the real product, how could I able to sell the product? And when you sell the product through this kind of channel, you are working towards a cultural shift in the customer, where customer feel that without touch and feel I can buy it. Then you work on the multiple other angle, in terms of the AR or the VR, or even you can have a Danube on a wheel where we take the product to the customer's house, customer likes it, he takes it. If it doesn't like, you bring it back, or you do the easy return. So these are the multiple avenue or multiple ways through which you try to connect to the customer.
So are you saying, just going back, sorry, just to be clear, so are you saying that right now sales per square foot is not a metric at all, or it's just one of the metrics out of everything else?
It is one of the metric, but beside that, we do calculate that the showroom, for example, we do, the return per bedroom. Like, so for example, in Barsha store, I have 38 bedrooms. So what is my return of the each bedroom? Because now we realize that 38 bedrooms are in the display, but I have 20 more bedrooms in my warehouse, which is not in display at all. But customer, when he see the screen, then he place the order from there. So that is the metrics where you calculate or you find out without displaying the products also, you can sell the product. So that which you work towards the cultural shift. But the most important, what Philip was saying, I 100% agree. It requires with the mental shift in your people around. So unless and until all the stakeholders, they buy in the same thing and they believe in the same vision or they believe in the same goal, then only you will be able to achieve that. So that is the another thing, like, how do we train our people? How do we equip them with all the information so that it can work out in the same fashion?
Understood. Okay. So
Shruti, just to interject on that point. So since you asked the question, do retailers look at return per square foot? I would say today that the conversation's moved because yes, you do look at return per square foot, but you also look at exactly what Said said, that if you're shipping it from the warehouse, you're looking at the delivery cost instead. And if you look at it at the end of the day, what you're paying as per rent as a percentage of sales or delivery cost as a percentage of sales is going to start to turn out to be more or less the same at some stage over there. So the cost of that transaction, when you looked at it, you looked at the store staff, you looked at everything else, you looked at the rent percentage, and now you take the fulfillment, you take the delivery, and you take all of that. Those metrics are going to start balancing out and calibrating at some stage. Because we are starting to see the volumes across both the channels come to a stage where it starts to cover up in that sense.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a conversation I just had with a restaurant recently about cloud kitchens, right? A lot of restaurants moved into cloud kitchens because it just made more sense for them to not have the restaurant open for just the 10 people who would come. Instead, delivery was giving them 80% of their revenue. So just in that context, I thought I'd just make sure if return per square foot is still a metric at all or not.